She got a $2 tip all day at closing. The Mafia boss left $20,000 in an envelope. The coffee tasted like burnt tires. It was the bottom of the pot, which made sense because it was 17 minutes past 2 in the morning and I was the only waitress working the floor. My apron pocket felt empty, the canvas limp against my hip. I had been on my feet for 10 hours straight, my sneakers feeling 2 sizes too small, and my total haul for the entire shift was $2. A single, sad $1 bill and 4 quarters, mocking me from the pocket. My name is Lark Moreno. I'm 24 years old, but on nights like this, I feel closer to 40. And this place, the Salt and Forge, is my own special kind of purgatory. It's a 24/7 diner in Harbor Fall, New Columbia, a city that always smells like diesel exhaust and damp pavement. The Forge part of the name, I always figured, came from the shipyard noise that never, ever stopped. A constant dull ringing that vibrated in your teeth. $2. I wiped the counter again, the rag sour. $2 wouldn't cover the bus fare to St. Maro's private hospital, let alone the co-pay for my stepmother's treatments. The eviction notice was taped to the inside of my apartment door, a flash of neon pink that screamed at me every time I left, reminding me that I was falling behind. Moreno. I jumped, the coffee pot sloshing in my hand. Bert Haggerty. He didn't walk. He oozed, shuffling across the linoleum, radiating cheap cologne and disapproval. His polyester manager's shirt was pulled tight over his stomach, a pale yellow mustard stain blooming near the collar. "You're not clocked out," he said. It wasn't a question. He tapped the wall clock. My shift ended at 2. Bert, Maria was supposed to relieve me. Maria called out, "Flu!" He snapped his gum, a wet, popping sound. "So you're staying? We've got the graveyard rush to prep for." The graveyard rush at the Salt and Forge meant maybe 3 cab drivers and a drunk college kid. "I can't," I said, my voice weaker than I wanted. "I have to." "You have to keep this job, Lark." He leaned in, and I fought the urge to step back from his stale coffee breath. "And I'm cutting your tip share from the pool tonight. Saw you taking too long with table 4 earlier. That's against the new rules. Time is money." My stomach clenched. He knew table 4 had been an elderly man who needed help reading the fine print on the menu. "That's not fair, Bert." "Fair is what keeps the lights on." He tapped the greasy ledger on his podium. "You want the hours or not?" I looked down at the countertop, at the swirling, faded pattern. The fight evaporated, replaced by the familiar, cold dread. I was weak, and he knew it. I kept my mouth shut to keep my job. I had no other choice. "Yes, Bert, I'll stay." "Atta girl." He gave my shoulder a squeeze that felt more like a pinch, his fingers digging in. I turned back to the counter, my own reflection staring back at me from the chrome of the espresso machine. Tired eyes, dark hair pulled back so tight it made my temples ache. I was stuck. The bell over the front door chimed. It was a clean, sharp sound, completely out of place in the thick, greasy air. He walked in as if the sticky floor was polished marble. He wasn't a big man, not in the way the shipyard workers were big. He was precise. His suit was simple, a dark charcoal gray, but it fit him in a way that screamed money, not the loud, flashy kind, but the quiet, custom-tailored kind. He couldn't have been much older than 35. He didn't look up at the menu board with its peeling letters. He slid onto a stool at the far end of the counter, the one that faced the door and had a clear view of the entire room. I grabbed a menu and a glass of water, the ice rattling. "Just black coffee and a slice of the apple pie." His voice was low, smooth, with an accent I couldn't quite place. It wasn't from Harbor Fall. "You want that heated a la mode?" I asked. The standard upsell Bert drilled into us. "No, just the pie, thank you." He sat there, perfectly still. He drank his coffee slowly, methodically. He didn't check his phone. He just watched. His eyes, a very dark, very calm brown, swept the room once. They noted Bert at the register. noted the leaking faucet in the back, and then they noted me. He held my gaze for just a second. It wasn't a leer, like the truckers gave. It wasn't pitying. It was an assessment, like he was calculating the structural integrity of a building. It was polite, but cold as the steel off the harbor. He finished the pie in silence. He pushed the plate away, folded his paper napkin, and placed it neatly on the counter. He reached into his suit jacket, pulled out some cash not from a wallet, but from a sleek silver money clip, and laid it down. Then he stood, adjusted his cuffs, and walked out. The bell chimed again, and he was gone. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding and went to clear the plate. His bill was $8.50. He'd left a 20, a good tip. God, I needed it. Then I saw the envelope. It was tucked just under the placemat, thick and white and heavy. It felt expensive, made of linen paper. On the front, written in neat, strong pencil script, were 3 words for your shift. My heart didn't just beat, it slammed against my ribs. This was a mistake. He forgot it. This was someone's payroll. "Bert, I'll be right back," I yelled, grabbing the envelope and sprinting for the door. I burst out into the damp night air, the chill hitting my face. "Sir, excuse me, you forgot this." He was already at the curb, a black sedan. So clean it looked wet, was waiting for him. It had no front license plate. A man in an identical dark suit held the rear door open. I noticed 2 other identical cars, one parked in front, one behind, both idling, their engines a low, powerful thrum. The air around them felt different, heavier, charged with quiet power. The man turned, pausing with his hand on the car door. "You left this," I said, breathless, holding out the heavy envelope. He looked at the envelope, then at me. "It's not a mistake." "I can't accept this. I don't know what it is." "But I can't." "Yes, you can." Before I could argue, Bert Haggerty was beside me, his hand snatching the envelope from my grasp. What's this soliciting customers on the sidewalk now? Moreno? Bert, blinded by the sudden appearance of wealth, didn't notice the cars. He didn't notice the driver's hand moving inside his jacket. The man Pietro Viscari, though I wouldn't know his name until later, looked at Bert. His calm expression didn't change, but the coldness intensified, dropping the temperature by 20 degrees. "That," he said, his voice flat, "belongs to her." Bert just laughed, a high-pitched, nervous sound. He tore the envelope flap open. He looked inside. The laugh died in his throat. His face went slack, then pale, then a blotchy. Furious red, his hands, the ones that held the envelope, were shaking. "Bert, what is it?" I whispered. He pulled out a stack of bills, and another, all hundreds. This is $20,000. My breath stopped. The entire street, the hum of the cars, the buzz of the diner's neon sign. It all went silent. $20,000. Bert's fear turned instantly to viciousness. He was a cornered rat. "What kind of game are you playing, girl? This is drug money. This is laundering." He shoved the money back into the envelope, his eyes darting wildly between me and the man. "I'm calling the MVPC, the Metropolitan Vice Prevention Committee. They'll shut you down for this, Moreno. You're fired. You're fired." The man, Pietro, ignored Bert's screeching. He looked only at me. "It's yours," he said, his voice cutting through Bert's rant like a razor. Then he got in the car. The door clicked shut with the heavy, final sound of a vault. The 3-car convoy pulled away from the curb, silent and smooth, and disappeared into the harbor fall night. I was left on the sidewalk, shaking, with Bert Haggerty holding an envelope that could either ruin my life or save it. "Give it to me, Bert." My voice was a croak. "No way. This is evidence," he sneered, but his eyes were greedy. He was already calculating how much he could skim off the top. "It's not yours. It was left for me. And if you're really calling the MVPC, then I'm taking it to the precinct. Right now." I made a grab for it. We struggled for a second, a pathetic tug of war on the dirty sidewalk under the buzzing neon light. I was younger, faster and fueled by pure panic. I ripped it from his grasp and clutched it to my chest. "You're done, Moreno. You're finished. Don't bother coming back," he screamed after me as I ran. I didn't care. I just needed to get away, to get to the police, to dump this impossible problem on someone else's desk. I didn't get 5 steps. 2 men stepped out of the alleyway that separated the diner from the laundromat. They were built like refrigerators, wearing cheap, thin jackets and expressions that had seen too much. "Lark Moreno," one of them said. It wasn't a question. He had a faint white scar that split his right eyebrow. "I'm busy." I tried to push past him. The other one, shorter but wider, blocked my path. "We're from North Point Recoveries. We're here about your father's outstanding balance." My blood ran cold. My father, the gambler, the man who had disappeared 2 years ago, leaving nothing behind but debts and a hole in our lives. "He's gone. I told your office." "Debt's not gone," Scarborough said, "and we see you've just come into some money." He lunged for the envelope. I screamed and held on, but he was too strong. He twisted my arm, pain shooting up from my wrist to my shoulder, a white-hot spike. Tires squealed. A silver coupe, low and sleek, materialized at the curb, stopping so hard the chassis dipped. The driver's door opened. It was Pietro Vescari. He had come back. He moved differently now. Not the calm diner patron. He moved like a panther, all coiled muscle and lethal grace, covering the distance in 3 silent strides. The man holding my arm didn't even see him coming. Pietro didn't raise his voice. He simply took the man's wrist and applied pressure. There was a sickening, quiet snap. The man roared, letting me go. The second collector pulled a knife, its blade catching the neon light. Pietro stepped inside the man's reach, hit him once in the throat with the heel of his hand and once in the solar plexus. The man collapsed, gagging, the knife clattering on the pavement. It was over in less than 5 seconds. Pietro turned to me. I was breathing hard, pressed against the cold brick wall. He calmly straightened his suit jacket. He looked at the 2 men on the ground, then back at me. He placed one hand on my shoulder. His touch was light, almost gentle, but it pinned me in place. It wasn't comfort. It was a gesture of absolute, terrifying control. "She is under my protection," he said, his voice still low, directed at the gasping men. The one with the broken wrist scrambled to his feet, clutching his arm, his face white with pain and, beneath that, a dawning, horrified recognition. "Vescari," the man whispered, his voice choked with terror. "We didn't know. We're just... North Point. We were just collecting." "Leave," Pietro said. The man grabbed his partner. Dragging him up, they stumbled away, but at the edge of the alley, the one with the scar turned back, his fear mixed with a final sliver of stupid defiance. "The Vidron Circle will hear about this. They won't let this stand." The name hung in the air. The Vidron Circle. Even I knew that name. It was the shadow that ran Harborfall, the ghost story parents told their kids. Except it was real. The streets suddenly felt 10 degrees colder. Pietro didn't react. He waited until they had vanished into the darkness. He turned his full attention to me. I was still shaking, the envelope crushed against my chest. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head, unable to find my voice. He looked at the envelope I was clutching. "The money is yours. Lark, it buys time." He paused, his dark eyes seeming to see right through me, past the fear and the exhaustion, right to the pink eviction notice taped to my apartment door. "But it does not buy your silence." He took his hand from my shoulder. He got back into the silver coupe. The engine roared to life, and he was gone, leaving me alone in the alley, trembling under the buzzing neon of the Salt and Forge sign, holding $20,000 in cash and a whole new world of trouble. I ran. I did not walk. I did not look back at the Salt and Forge. I just ran. I ran the 6 blocks to my apartment building, the envelope a solid, terrifying brick against my chest, held inside my thin jacket. My hand, the one that wasn't clutching the money, fumbled with the keys. I slammed the door, threw the deadbolt, and jammed my only kitchen chair under the knob. My apartment was one room, a kitchenette with a sputtering faucet, and a bathroom where the mold was winning a slow, black war against the tile. The pink eviction notice on the door seemed to vibrate in the silence. I sat on my mattress, which was also my couch, and I stared at the envelope. $20,000. In cash, in hundreds. More money than I'd ever seen in one place. Enough to pay the rent for 3 years. Enough to cover my stepmother's hospital bills for months. Maybe clear the whole balance. My first thought was the police. I would walk into the precinct and hand it over and say what a man gave me this at the diner. And then Bert fired me. And then 2 men from North Point tried to take it. And then the first man came back and broke one of their wrists. They would look at me, Lark Moreno, with my worn-out shoes and my second-hand jacket, and they would see a drug mule, or a prostitute, or a liar. They would take the money as evidence, and I would be right back where I started. Only now I'd be unemployed and on the radar of the Vidrone circle. My second thought was to give it back, but how I didn't know his name. I didn't know where he lived. He just appeared and disappeared in a convoy of silent, black cars. I dumped the contents onto my faded comforter. The stacks of $100 bills were crisp, bound in simple paper bands, and with them, 2 other things fell out. One was a business card, thick, heavy stock, just like the envelope, and it was pure white. In the center, in the same strong, graphite gray script, was a name, Pietro Viscari, and under it a 10-digit phone number. No title, no company, no address. The second was a small, folded note, made from the same paper. I opened it. More pencil script. Do not open your door for anyone unless you hear the password, Harbor Fall Salt Rain. My blood turned to ice. A password. Who uses a password? A violent crash echoed through the thin metal of my door. Lark Moreno, we know you're in there. I jumped so hard I almost screamed, scrambling backward on the mattress, sweeping the money back into the envelope. It was them, the men from the alley, North Point Recoveries. Another slam, this one making the chair beneath the knob skid a few inches. Open up, girl, we're here for the collateral. We've got a writ of seizure. I don't have anything, I yelled, my voice shaking so badly I barely recognized it. You've got 20 grand is what you've got. It was the voice of the one with the scar. You think we don't know who he is? You're playing with fire. The Vidrone circle will burn you down just for talking to him. Open the door. Another slam. The frame splintered. The chair wouldn't hold for long. Panic, pure and white, flooded my throat. I looked at the phone in my hand. I looked at the business card. Pietro Viscari. I had no choice. My fingers, trembling, dialed the number. It rang once. Viscari Coordination. The voice was female, impossibly calm, professional, and cold as a winter morning. I was stammering. I need to speak to... I don't know, he gave me a card and there are men... The password, please. The password. Harbor Fall Salt Rain. I choked out. One moment, there was a click. No music, just silence. Then she was back. Miss Moreno, go out your fire escape. Do not go onto the street. Go over the roof to the next building. Exit onto Ash Street. Go 4 blocks south to the Spindrift Suds laundromat. It is open all night. Go to the back. Through the employee door. It is unlocked. Wait there. The line went dead. Another crash. The door was buckling. I grabbed my bag, shoved the envelope deep inside, and slung it over my shoulder. I didn't take anything else. I ran to the window, wrestled with the stuck frame, and shoved it open. The fire escape was slick with the night's dampness. I climbed out, pulled the window shut, and started to climb, my heart hammering against my ribs, the shouting from my apartment fading as I scrambled onto the gravel-coated roof. The walk was the longest 4 blocks of my life. Every shadow seemed to move. Every passing car made me flinch. The Spindrift Suds was a lonely block of fluorescent light in an otherwise dark, industrial part of the neighborhood. I slipped in, my eyes darting around. It was empty. save for a single dryer tumbling a pair of sneakers. I found the employee door in the back. It was unlocked, just as she'd said. It led to a small, windowless break room, spotlessly clean, a table, 2 chairs, and a vending machine humming in the corner. I sat, my legs shaking, my bag clutched in my lap. I waited for maybe 10 minutes. Then the door opened, and Pietro Vascari walked in. He looked exactly as he had at the diner. The suit was immaculate. Not a drop of rain, not a speck of dust. He must have been waiting nearby. "You were followed," he said. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. "What? No, I did what the woman said. I came over the roof." "A man on a motorcycle. He was waiting on Ash Street. He saw you come down." "I didn't see anyone," I whispered. "He tried to grab your bag." "What are you—" "No one tried to—" I stopped. I realized he wasn't telling me what would happen. He was telling me what had happened while I was walking, terrified. Someone had tried to get to me, and Pietro had, for a second time, intervened without my ever knowing it. "He's being dealt with," Pietro said, his voice flat. He pulled the other chair out, turned it around, and sat, straddling it, his arms resting on the back. He was Vidron. The tattoo was on his neck. They are moving faster than I anticipated. We sat in the sterile silence of the break room, the hum of the vending machine filling the space between us. He nodded at the bag I was clutching. "Why do you still have it?" The question caught me off guard. "What?" "The money. After Bert. After North Point. After they broke down your door. Why did you bring it? Why not just leave it? Why not throw it in a sewer?" I swallowed, forcing the tremor from my voice. I was tired of being scared. I was tired of being weak. "Because it's not mine," I said, meeting his gaze. "And I don't want to owe a favor." For the first time, I saw something shift in his expression. It wasn't a full smile, but the corner of his mouth ticked up, a tiny, almost invisible flicker of amusement. "A favor," he said, tasting the word. "A favor is the interest paid on trust. I keep my rates low, lark." "I don't have any trust to give," I said, "and I don't want your grace. I need time." "Time for what?" I don't know why I told him. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the fact that he had, twice, saved me from physical harm. Or maybe it was just the profound, unsettling calm he projected. "My stepmother, she's at St. Maro Private. She has a rare blood disorder. She needs treatments twice a week. The insurance, they suspended the policy. They said it was a data error, a clerical mistake. But it's been 3 weeks. The bills are piling up. They'll discharge her by the end of the week if I can't make a payment. I just need time. Time to fix the paperwork. Time to find a new job, a second job." I hadn't realized I was crying until a tear hit the canvas of the bag in my lap. I wiped it away, angry at myself. Pietro watched me, his expression unreadable again. The moment of warmth was gone, replaced by that cool, analytical stare. "St. Maro," he said, "and North Point Recoveries, and the MVPC." He shook his head slowly. "You're not caught in a coincidence? Lark, you're caught in a net." "What do you mean?" North Point Recoveries is a collections arm of the Vidron Circle. They buy debt to create leverage. They're the muscle. The Metropolitan Vice Prevention Committee. They're just a different kind of muscle. They have long arms, and several of them have been bought by Vidron. They provide the legal harassment, the data error at your insurance company. It wasn't an error, it was a pin, inserted to hold you in place. My breath hitched. "But why me? I'm a waitress. My father, he was a gambler, but he's gone." "You work at the Salt and Forge, a 24-hour diner that sees everything that moves in and out of the harbor. You're invisible. You're the perfect person to put in a cage to see if you'll sing for your supper." "And you?" I asked, my voice small. "Where do you fit in?" "I am a competitor." He stood, the chair scraping lightly on the tile. "I don't like their methods, and I don't like their hold on the harbor." He walked to the door. I felt this sudden, ridiculous urge to tell him not to go. in this sterile, fluorescent-lit room with this man who was admittedly a criminal. I felt for the first time all night completely safe. It was a bizarre, unsettling feeling. It was a low, electric hum in the air, a current running between us that had no name. It terrified me more than the men with the knives. "What do I do?" I asked. He turned, his hand on the door. "Tomorrow you go to work." Bert fired me. "He'll unfire you. North Point's failure tonight will make them cautious. They'll want to see your next move. They'll want you back where they can see you. So, you go. You work your normal shift. You pour coffee. You act as if tonight never happened. And the money," I motioned to my bag. "Keep it, pay the hospital, pay your rent, buy your time. They already know you have it. What they don't know is what you'll do next." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, black device. It looked like a miniature walkie-talkie, slim and modern. He placed it on the table. "Keep this with you. It's tuned to a single frequency, channel 4. He looked at me, his eyes holding mine. "When you need it, you say the words, 'Harbor Falls Salt Rain.'" He opened the door and was gone, the latch clicking shut, leaving me alone with $20,000 and a direct line to the most dangerous man in Harbor Fall. I went back to the Spindrift Suds break room the next morning. My uniform was still there, smelling faintly of bleach and detergent. I had not slept. I had, however, taken a taxi to St. Maro's Private Hospital at 4 in the morning. I used $200 of the money to pay the emergency intake fee, a down payment to stop them from discharging my stepmother. It bought me 48 hours. The small, heavy radio Pietro had given me was a cold weight in my jeans pocket. I walked to the Salton Forge at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, right on time for my evening shift. Pietro had been right. Bert did unfire me. When I walked in, he was at the register, counting out the float for the drawer. He looked up, and his face was a miserable mask of sour resentment and fear. He looked pale. "You're late," he mumbled, his eyes fixed on the nickels and dimes in his hand. "You fired me," I said. My voice was quiet. I wasn't going to make this easy for him. "Well, I'm unfiring you." He shoved the cash drawer closed. "Maria's still out with that flu. You're on the floor." He didn't mention the $20,000. He didn't mention North Point Recoveries or the Vidron Circle. He didn't mention the men who had come to my apartment. He just shuffled back to his cramped office, refusing to look at me. The air between us was thick and fragile, and it stank of his fear. He was terrified, but I couldn't tell if he was more scared of me or of what I now represented. The diner was slow, the usual Tuesday night lull, a few truckers, a couple studying for exams, the low hum of the coolers. At 9:15, the bell chimed. A woman slid into booth 4, the one in the back with the vinyl seat split open like a wound. She was not our usual clientele. She wore a fitted leather jacket that looked like it had seen a lot of miles. Her hair was short and spiky blonde, and her eyes were sharp, scanning the room, noting every exit. She looked like she hadn't slept in 2 days. She ordered a black coffee, just like Pietro. I brought it to her, cream or sugar. She kept her voice low, barely above the hiss of the coffee machine. Lark Moreno. My whole body went rigid. "Who's asking?" "My name is Tamsin Voss." She slid a laminated card across the table, a press badge, but she kept her thumb over the photograph. "I'm an independent journalist. I'm looking into the Salton Forge." I felt a cold prickle of alarm. "We've got a B+ rating from the health department. That's all I know." I started to pull the coffee pot back. "I'm not looking at the kitchen," she said, her voice stopping me. "I'm looking at the loading dock. I'm looking into Sunspire Logistics." My hand tightened on the handle of the pot. "Sunspire is moving contraband through the harbor," she whispered, her eyes intense, locking onto mine. "Undocumented pharmaceuticals, high-end electronics, and they're washing the money. Millions. They're washing it through a very aggressive, very nasty little collections agency called North Point Recoveries." I felt the blood drain from my face. I slid into the booth opposite her, the coffee pot still in my hand. Why are you telling me this? Because North Point doesn't just collect debt, they create it. They find pressure points. Like, for instance, the stepdaughter of a known gambler with old debts, a young woman whose stepmother just happens to have her insurance policy frozen by a clerical error. My breath caught. You've been watching me. I've been watching them, she corrected. And they have been watching you, but so has someone else, Pietro Vescari. The name, spoken by a stranger, hit me like a physical blow. Which makes you very interesting. Lark, you're at the center of the storm. What I need to know is, who are you loyal to? I'm loyal to me, I said, my voice hoarse, and to my stepmom. Good answer. She reached into her messenger bag and pulled out her phone. She slid it across the table. The screen lit up. It was a photograph. Grainy. Clearly taken from a high angle. Maybe the roof of the building across the street. It was time-stamped 3 nights ago, just after midnight. It showed the back parking lot of the diner. It showed Bert, his face pale and sweating under the single security light. He was handing a thick manila envelope to another man, a man in an expensive suit, his silver hair and sharp profile perfectly illuminated. Do you know who that is? Tamsin asked. I shook my head. That, she said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper, is City Councilman Roderick Hale? I stared at the image. Bert. Our Bert, the sniveling, greasy spoon manager, handing an envelope to one of the most powerful men in Harbor Fall, right in the same spot where I hauled the trash bags every single night. Bert is the bagman, I whispered, the pieces clicking together with a horrible, metallic sound. The diner. It's the drop point. It's the hub, Tamsin corrected. Sunspire brings the product in. North Point and the Vidron Circle distribute it and collect the cash. And Hale keeps the MVPC and the FCSA off their backs. It's a closed loop, and the Salton Forge is the laundry machine. The FCSA, Federal Commerce Security Agency, they're supposed to be regulating the port. Instead, they're protecting Sunspire's shipping lanes. Tamsin took the phone back, slipping it into her pocket. I can't publish this. It's circumstantial. An envelope isn't proof. But you're on the inside. You hear things. You see things. Bert trusts you. Or at least, he thinks you're too weak to matter. She was asking me to spy. What do you want? I want Sunspire. I want Hale. I want the whole rotten structure to come down. Vescari just wants his competition gone. My way. The city actually gets cleaned up, his way. It just gets a new boss. Her words hit a nerve. Pietro's protection was heavy. Tamsin was offering a way out. She wrote a number on a napkin. Meet me tomorrow, midnight, the old cannery pier on Dock 12. Bring me anything you find, anything you hear, anything at all. She stood up, threw a $10 bill on the table for the coffee, and walked out. I sat there, staring at the napkin. My first instinct, the one that screamed with survival, was to use the radio, to press the button, to call Harbor Fall Salt Rain, to tell Pietro everything. He would know what to do. He would handle it. But Tamsin's words echoed in my head. His way. It just gets a new boss. He had offered me protection. Tamsin was offering me a weapon, this photograph, this knowledge. This was the first time in my life I wasn't just a victim. I wasn't just surviving. I was holding a piece of the puzzle. I folded the napkin and put it in my apron pocket, right next to the cold, hard radio. I would not call Pietro. I would meet Tamsin. I would handle this myself. The surge of empowerment, the feeling of taking control, lasted for exactly 2 hours. At 11:30, the front door chimed. 4 men walked in. They were not truckers. They were tall, broad, and wore matching navy blue windbreakers with FCSA printed in large, authoritative yellow letters on the back. The lead agent, a man with a heavy jaw and cold, dead eyes, flashed a badge at Bert, who had come shuffling out of his office. Federal Commerce Security Agency. We're conducting a surprise audit under the Patriot Act. This establishment is now under federal jurisdiction. Bert, to my genuine surprise, looked utterly terrified. This was not part of his plan. Audit for what? We're a diner, we serve pancakes. "We're investigating interstate contraband violations and unlicensed currency transmission," the agent said, his voice booming in the nearly empty diner. He turned, and his dead eyes landed right on me. "Starting with your staff, ma'am. We'll need you to come with us for questioning, and we'll be seizing all employee property on site, pending investigation." They were coming for me, and they were coming for the money, which I had stupidly hidden in my locker in the back room. "Do you have a warrant?" I asked. My voice shook, but I held my ground, my hand slipping into my pocket, my fingers closing around the radio. The agent sneered. "We have a federal mandate, sweetheart. That's better than a warrant." He jerked his head at the other two agents. "Get her, and toss the locker room." "No," I backed away. "You can't just—" "Don't interfere with a federal investigation, sir," one of the agents said, shoving Bert hard against the counter. The other one grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in like claws. I tried to pull away, my thumb finding the button on the radio, but he was too strong. "Get your hands off her!" The voice cut through the diner like a sheet of ice. Pietro Vescari was standing by the door. He was not alone. Beside him stood a shorter, older man, impeccably dressed in a rumpled, absurdly expensive-looking tweed suit. He was carrying a battered leather briefcase. The FCSA agents froze, the one holding my arm loosening his grip just enough for me to breathe. "This is a federal operation, sir. Identify yourself," the lead agent blustered, trying to regain his authority. "I'm Pietro Vescari. This is my counsel, Ari Mendel." Pietro walked forward, his presence sucking all the air out of the room. He placed himself directly between me and the agent holding my arm. He didn't look at the agent, he looked at me, his dark eyes searching my face. "Are you all right, Lark?" "They said—" I stammered. "I believe you cited," Ari Mendel said, his voice surprisingly sharp and clear. "A federal mandate." He stepped forward, opening his briefcase. "I'm always fascinated by those. They're so wonderfully vague. Now, you claim to be FCSA, which is interesting, because FCSA jurisdiction, under Title 19, is strictly limited to Port Authority property and interstate cargo vessels, a diner, which serves, if I'm not mistaken, intrastate eggs and coffee falls somewhat outside that purview. Wouldn't you agree? The lead agent puffed up. "We have probable cause." "Do you?" Ari pulled a pair of spectacles from his pocket and perched them on his nose, because probable cause would require a warrant signed by a federal judge. What you have, he tapped the paper the agent was holding, is a seizure request, not an order, and it's signed by a regional port administrator, a man who, I might add, is currently under investigation by the state bar for ethics violations. So, gentlemen, you are not FCSA agents. You are committing aggravated impersonation of a federal officer, which carries a mandatory minimum sentence of 3 years. The color drained from the lead agent's face. Pietro hadn't moved. He just watched them. His hands relaxed at his sides. "You have," Ari continued, checking his pocket watch, 10 seconds to vacate these premises before I place a call to the URC's Marshal's office, and I assure you, their agents are real." The agents looked at each other, their authority shattered. The bluff was broken as one. They turned and walked quickly out of the diner. The bell chimed, and they were gone. Silence descended. It was just me, Pietro, Ari, and a sputtering, humiliated Bert. Ari Mendel packed his briefcase. "My work here is done. Pietro, Miss Moreno." He nodded curtly and let himself out. Bert's terror, finding no outlet against the fake agents, recoiled and aimed itself at the nearest, weakest target, me. His face contorted in a mask of pure rage. "You?" he shrieked, pointing a shaking finger. "You brought this. This is your fault. You and your gangster boyfriend, you're ruining me." He lunged, not at Pietro, but at me. His hand was raised, open, coming fast for my face. It happened in a heartbeat. I flinched, bracing for the sting of the slap. It never came. Pietro's hand shot out and caught Bert's wrist, stopping it mid-air, inches from my cheek. He didn't just block it, he gripped it. Bert cried out, A thin, pathetic sound, his knees buckling as Pietro applied pressure. Pietro's face was no longer calm. It was cold. It was steel. It was the face of a man who owned the shadows, and he was furious. "Nobody touches my people," he said, his voice a low, vibrating growl that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. He shoved Bert's arm back so hard that Bert stumbled backward and crashed into the rotating pie display. Glass shattered, sending shards and lemon meringue flying across the floor. Pietro didn't spare him another look. He turned to me, his eyes scanning my face, checking for injuries. The anger was still there, but it was banked, controlled. "The rest of your shift is canceled." He turned to the other 3 customers in the diner, who were staring, wide-eyed, from their booths. He pulled the same silver money clip from his pocket, dropped $500 bills on the counter. "Everyone's meal is paid. Now, everyone leaves." It was not a request. People scrambled, grabbing their coats, their eyes darting between Pietro and the mess of glass. In 30 seconds, the diner was empty, except for Bert, who was nursing his wrist in the corner, and us. Pietro looked at me. The silence was thick, broken only by the hum of the cooler and Bert's quiet whimpering, the look in his eyes. It was terrifying. It was intense enough to cut glass, but beneath it, there was something else. A flicker of heat, so deep and protected it almost hurt to look at. It was the same look he'd had when I told him I wouldn't take his grace. It was warmth, but it was not soft. It was the heat of a forge, sharp and refining. "This is escalating," he said, his voice back to its normal, calm cadence. "They won't send fakes next time. They know you're connected to me, and they know about the money. You are no longer safe in your apartment, and your stepmother is not safe at St. Maro." Panic, cold and sharp, seized my throat. "What they'll hurt her. They will move her. They will lose her in the system. They will use her to control you. I am moving you tonight, and I am moving her." "No, you can't. The doctors. Her treatment." "I sponsor a private clinic, Asterian Care. It's clean. It's secure. The doctors are the best in the state. She will be safe there, and she will get her treatment, and you will have new locks and a car." He was offering me a golden cage. "Protection," I whispered. "Yes." I looked at the wreckage of the pie case. I thought of Tamsin's warning, his way. It just gets a new boss. I thought of the napkin in my pocket. If I went with him, if I accepted this, I was his. But if I didn't, my stepmother was a target. "I'll agree," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "I'll let you move her, temporarily, on one condition." He raised an eyebrow, a fractional movement. "This, my work." I waved my hand at the diner, at the city. "You don't interfere. You don't tell me where I can and cannot go. You are protecting her, not owning me." A long moment passed. I expected him to refuse, to tell me I was being foolish. "You keep the radio," he said, his voice flat. "You use it if you are in danger, but I will not chain you to a wall. The agreement is temporary. Agreed." I let out the breath I was holding. "Agreed." "Good. Get your things from your locker. We're leaving." I walked toward the kitchen, my legs unsteady. I could feel his eyes on my back the entire way. As I passed the corner booth, I didn't see it. I didn't see the tiny red light blinking once, twice, in the darkness of the surveillance camera that Bert had pointed at the front door. I didn't know that someone was recording. Someone was watching Pietro Viscari, the mafia boss, step in front of a lowly waitress. Someone was watching the fire get lit. The transfer was fast, quiet, and terrifyingly efficient. Pietro's people were not like the orderlies at St. Maro. They were silent, moved with purpose, and wore suits. Asterian Care was not a hospital. It was a medical facility hidden inside what looked like a luxury hotel, tucked away in the wealthy, old money hills far from the harbor's diesel smoke. The nurses were kind. The administrative staff was transparent. The paperwork I signed was simple, clear, and had no complex clauses. My stepmother was settled into a private room with a window that overlooked a serene, manicured garden, not a brick wall, a doctor, a woman with kind eyes and an air of sharp intelligence. Sat with me for 20 minutes and explained the entire treatment plan. I felt a wave of relief so powerful it made my knees buckle. For the first time in 3 years, I knew she was completely, unequivocally safe. As I walked out of the gleaming, automatic doors, I saw Pietro waiting by the silver coupe. The relief was immediately followed by a cold, hard realization. This kind of safety, this kind of efficiency, had a price. I had just paid it. He didn't take me to a sterile high-rise or a guarded compound. He drove the coupe himself, navigating the winding roads of Harbor Falls' steep hills, climbing until the whole port was spread out below us, a blanket of industrial lights. We stopped on a dark street, in front of a small, modern house built into the cliffside, almost invisible from the road. He used a physical key to open the door. The inside smelled like old books and dark roast coffee. It was one large, open room, dominated by a functional, serious-looking stainless steel kitchen. The living area was simple, a large, worn-in brown leather sofa, the kind that looked like it had been nap-broken for a decade, and one entire wall that was a floor-to-ceiling bookshelf. I scanned the titles. Not finance, not law, American realists, Steinbeck, Wharton, Faulkner, stacks of Raymond Carver. It was not the home I expected. It was the home of a man who read about the very people he now ruled. The rain started then. A soft tapping on the massive picture window that overlooked the harbor, quickly escalating to a steady drum. It was past midnight. "Are you hungry?" he asked. I realized I hadn't eaten since a piece of stale toast 16 hours ago. I just nodded. The refrigerator was stocked, not with champagne and caviar, but with eggs, fresh vegetables, good cheese, and a pitcher of water. We moved around the kitchen, a strange, silent, domestic dance. He pulled out a heavy skillet, and I found a cutting board, an onion, and a knife. I started chopping, the way I always did, the blade clumsy, my eyes already stinging. He was suddenly beside me. He didn't touch me. Not at first. "You'll tire your wrist out like that." His voice was low, close to my ear. I tensed, my grip tightening on the knife. "Relax your hand," he said. He placed his hand over mine. His skin was warm, his grip firm. It wasn't a caress, it was an instruction. He adjusted my fingers, curling them, tucking my thumb. "Like this. Let the weight of the blade do the work." His thumb brushed the back of my hand, a simple, correcting motion, a jolt, sharp and electric, shot straight up my arm and settled in my chest, a tiny, contained fire. I forgot to breathe. He held my hand there, guiding the knife through 1, 2, 3 precise cuts. The moment stretched, lasting far longer than necessary. Then, slowly, he withdrew his hand. "Better," he said, his voice a little rougher than before. I just nodded, my throat tight, and continued to chop, the rhythmic thud of the knife on the wood, the only sound in the room besides the pounding rain outside. We ate omelets and toast, sitting on stools at the kitchen island. The rain was a deluge now, a true Harbor Falls storm, isolating us from the rest of the world. I had run from the car to the front door, and my hair was damp, sticking to my neck and forehead. He got up, walked to a hall closet, and came back with a thick white bath towel. He stood behind me. I expected him to just hand it to me. Instead, he draped it over my head, and then, his hands, firm and gentle, began to dry my hair. I froze. His movements were slow, methodical. His fingers massaged my scalp through the soft terry cloth. It was the most impossibly intimate, non-sexual gesture I had ever experienced. It was more disarming than a touch, more intimate than a kiss. I closed my eyes, a shiver running through me that had nothing to do with the cold. It felt too good. It felt too dangerous. "Pietro," my voice was a whisper. "What is this?" His hand stilled, resting on my head. "It's protection." "No." I turned on the stool to face him. He was closer than I'd realized. I had to tilt my head back to look up at him. The towel fell into my lap. Asterian care is protection. The lawyer, Ari, that was protection. I gestured between us, at the kitchen, at the towel. This is something else. I had to draw the line, even as the rain was washing it away. I need my autonomy, I said, the words I'd practiced in my head. I meant what I said at the diner. I can't be one of your people. His expression was unreadable in the low light of the kitchen. I know. Then what do you want from me? I want the truth, he said, his voice dropping. I live in a world of mirrors. Lark, everyone is an angle. Everyone is a lie. Everyone wants something. You held on to $20,000 that could have solved all your problems, just to tell me you didn't want my grace. You didn't lie. You didn't barter. He paused, as if the words were foreign to him. That is rare. I need that. I need one person in this city who isn't trying to play me. It was a contract, a pact. My autonomy, I said, testing the weight of it. For your truth. He nodded. My autonomy for your truth. The tension in the room didn't break. It solidified. It changed from a question into a statement. Why me? I asked quietly. At the diner, you could have left the money and walked away. Why come back? He moved, leaning back against the counter, crossing his arms. I was watching Bert. The Vidron circle is getting sloppy, and Bert is their sloppiest link. I was there to measure him. Then I saw you. I saw him cut your tips. I saw you work a 10-hour shift for $2, and I remembered what it felt like. To be weak. To be underestimated, he corrected, his voice hard. My family used to be part of the harbor. My uncle ran a small shipping line. 15 years ago, during a harbor purge, the Vidron Circle, backed by men like Councilman Hale, pushed everyone out. My uncle refused to sell. They didn't just ruin him. They made an example of him. I lost. I lost people that day. The shared vulnerability hung in the air. My father was a gambler, I found myself saying. He left us with nothing but debt. My stepmother. She's the only person who ever stayed. We were always running, always poor, always the ones being pushed. I'm just so tired of being weak. You are not weak, Lark, he said. He said it like it was a fact, like the color of the sky. He was standing in front of me again. The space between us was down to inches. It was electric, charged with the rain and the confessions and the late-night quiet. I could smell the faint, clean scent of his soap and the coffee from earlier. He looked at my mouth. It was a clear, unmistakable question, and he waited. He was giving me the autonomy I had just demanded. I was the one who closed the distance. I leaned in, got up on my toes, and pressed my mouth to his. It was not a gentle kiss. It was a collision. It was all the fear and adrenaline of the past 2 days, all the tension from the alley, all the terror from the FCSA, and all the confusing, overwhelming safety I felt in this room. It all detonated in that one moment. He didn't hesitate. He responded instantly, his mouth firm and warm. His hands came up, not to my face, not to my hair, but to my back, spreading wide against my shoulder blades, pulling me against him. It wasn't a gesture of possession. It was a gesture of support. He was anchoring me, holding me up. His other hand settled on my waist, his grip strong, grounding. My hands clutched the lapels of his suit jacket, the expensive wool rough under my fingers. Our breathing hitched, ragged, loud in the quiet kitchen. The world narrowed to this, the solid wall of his chest, the frantic, pounding rhythm of my own heart, the clean taste of him. He deepened the kiss, a low sound rumbling in his chest, and I felt my knees give out. His jacket, the armor he always wore, slipped from his shoulders as my hands clung to him, falling to the tile floor between us in a silent, dark pool. We broke apart, but only for an air, foreheads touching. His eyes were dark, almost black, and burning with an intensity that took my breath away. Then his mouth was on mine again, softer this time, but deeper. A promise of things I didn't even know how to name. Later, I don't know how much later, the storm had passed, leaving only a gentle, rhythmic dripping outside. We were on the sofa, the old worn leather one. We were lying side by side, shoes off, but otherwise still fully clothed. He had his arm under my head as a pillow, and my hand was resting, palm down, flat against his chest. I could feel his heart, finally calm, beating a steady, solid rhythm under my palm. We didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. The kitchen light was still on, casting a warm yellow glow across the room. Through the window, the rain-washed lights of the harbor glittered like a field of fallen stars. I felt peaceful, a profound, bone-deep quiet I hadn't realized I was starving for. Staring at those lights, I knew I had crossed a line. This wasn't protection anymore. This wasn't a deal. I had made a choice. I had stepped out of the shadow of my old life and stepped directly into his. The silence was so total, so absolute, that the sound, when it came, felt like a physical blow. A sharp burst of static. It came from the kitchen counter, from my bag. The small black radio, Channel 4. Pietro was on his feet in one silent motion, pulling me up and behind him. We both stared at the radio. The static crackled again, and then a voice. Not mine, not Pietro's. It was metallic, filtered, and utterly unfamiliar. "The asset is in the nest," it said. "I repeat, the asset is in the nest." The static crackled again, sharp and loud in the quiet room. "I repeat, the asset is in the nest." Pietro was already moving, pulling me from the sofa, his body a shield between me and the window. The intimacy of the moment shattered, the warmth evaporating, replaced by the cold. Hard steel I recognized from the alley. "The radio?" I whispered, staring at my bag on the counter. "They're listening." "No," Pietro said, his voice flat, his eyes scanning the dark street outside the window. "They're broadcasting. On our channel. It was a beacon. They weren't tracking you, Lark. They were waiting for you to lead them to me." The realization hit me like a physical blow. The safe house was compromised. The entire night, the conversation, the kiss. We had been observed. "The asset," I whispered, my stomach clenching. "That's me. They think I'm your property. They're about to learn how wrong they are." He pulled his phone, not the one I had the number for, but a different, heavier device. He typed a single, rapid message. "We have 2 minutes." He did not have to explain. He grabbed my jacket, the one that had fallen to the floor, and threw it at me. He moved to the bookshelf, pushed aside a row of Faulkner, and pressed his palm against the wall. A panel clicked open, revealing a steel safe. He spun the dial, pulled out a handgun, a sleek, dark pistol checked the magazine, and slid it into a holster at the small of his back. He turned to me. "What I promised you, at Asterian Care. It's real. My people are meeting us at the exit. You will be safe." "No," I said, zipping my jacket, my fingers trembling but my voice steady. "They're coming for us both. They put that net around me. My stepmother, the diner, North Point. I'm not running. I'm not the asset." He looked at me, a long, calculating stare. The front door chimed, not the doorbell, but a soft electronic beep from his phone. "They're here," he said. He didn't mean Vidron. He meant his people. He led me through the kitchen to a pantry, which opened onto a narrow, concrete stairwell. We descended into a silent, private garage. A black sedan was waiting, the engine idling. The back door opened. A woman with short, dark hair and sharp, intelligent eyes sat behind the wheel. "Nova," she said, nodding to me. "We're dark. They've got a surveillance van 2 streets over." A man in the passenger seat, built like a vending machine, just grunted. "Jacks," Pietro supplied. We pulled out, the garage door closing silently behind us. We drove for 10 minutes without headlights, Nova navigating the winding roads with terrifying, fluid precision. We didn't go to another house. We went downtown to the warehouse district, pulling into a nondescript loading dock for a defunct textile company. Inside, it was not a home. It was a command center. Banks of monitors, tactical gear, and a large map of Harbor Falls spread across a steel table. A third man, younger, with nervous energy, was already there, pacing. "Elio," Pietro said. "They're moving, boss," Elio said, pointing at a screen that showed a grainy night vision feed. "The Wavelane complex, Sunspire, there's activity, 2 black vans, no plates, they're spooked." "The fake FCSA agents," I said, putting it together. "Our confrontation at the diner, it made Hale panic. He's moving the evidence." Pietro nodded. "All business now. He's consolidating. He's pulling the data from the satellite offices to the central hub. He thinks he can lock it down." "Which means it's all in one place," Nova said, her fingers flying across a keyboard. She brought up a blueprint of the Wavelane complex. It was a massive, windowless block of concrete near the shipyard. Digital fortress, Pietro, biometrics, seismic sensors, 24-hour armed guards. We can't get in. "They have to have a weak point," Pietro said, his eyes scanning the schematic. I leaned closer. Looking at the layout, I saw loading docks, offices, and then, in the sublevel, a diagram that looked familiar. "What's this?" I asked, pointing. "It looks like a kitchen." "Cafeteria and sanitation," Nova said. "Lowest security, but it's a dead end. Doesn't connect to the main servers." "But it gets you inside the building," I insisted. My mind was racing, pulling on the mundane details of my old life. At the diner, we had mandatory deep cleanse, industrial disinfection, once a month. The crew, they come in white hazmat suits. They carry pressurized tanks. Security never stops them. Nobody wants to get sprayed with industrial bleach or get in the way of a health inspector. The room went silent. I could feel Pietro's eyes on me. "A sanitation crew," he said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Nova." Nova was already typing. "It's plausible. I can create a work order, but the security at the gate—" "You create a distraction," I said, finding my rhythm. "At the diner, nothing cleared a room faster than Bert screaming about a health code violation. You spoof a call, not to the sanitation entrance, to the front gate, a level 1 biohazard alert, a fake tip-off from the Harbor Fall Food Safety Bureau. You tell them an infected shipment just arrived. They'll divert all their main security to the main loading dock. They'll be too busy looking for imaginary rats to notice a scheduled cleaning crew at the back door." Nova looked at Pietro and grinned. "I like her. I can do it. I can tie up their comms for 15 minutes, maybe 20. But once we're in, we're blind, and that door will lock behind us." Pietro turned to the map. "We don't need to be blind. We need to get to this room. Ledger 9. Nova pulled up a new file. "That's the core. It's an air-gap network drive. They call it Siren. It's not connected to the internet. It's the physical backup for all their transactions. I can't hack it remotely. Someone has to physically walk in and plug this in." She held up a small, black USB drive. "I'll do it," I said. "No," Pietro said, the single word absolute. "Yes," I countered, standing my ground. "It's why this works. They're looking for you. They're looking for your men. They're not looking for a waitress. I've spent my entire life being invisible. Pietro, let me use it." I looked at the file on the screen. That drive, Siren, it'll have the records, the money they're washing from Sunspire, the payments to North Point, and the payoffs. I saw the photograph Tamsin Voss had, Councilman Hale. The memo probably says RH Committee. This is the key to everything. It's the reason they put that net around me and my stepmother. This is my fight. I'm going in." Pietro looked at me for a long, hard second. He saw the resolve. He saw that I was no longer the asset. He nodded once. "Jax, Elio, you are perimeter. Nova, you're in the van. You are our eyes. Lark and I go in." "One rule," I said, looking at Jax, who was already checking a duffel bag full of weapons. "My rule, no casualties. No one gets seriously hurt unless we have no other choice. We are not them." Jax looked like he wanted to argue. "You heard her," Pietro said, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. "We are ghosts. We retrieve the data. We do not engage. We respond only if we are attacked. Understood." Jax zipped the bag, his movements sharp. "Understood." "This is risky," Nova warned, her face serious. The real Federal Commerce Security Agency has a field office 3 blocks from Wave Lane. If Hale panics and calls his actual FCSA contacts while we're inside, we could have a war. Real agents, fake agents, and us, all trapped in the same box. It'll be a mess. That mess is our cover, Pietro said. Elio, what's the exit? The old cargo railway, Elio said, pointing to a dotted line on the blueprint. It runs under the complex. I can get the access tunnel open. It's a straight shot to the harbor. Good. Get the uniforms. Jax, the tanks. Jax nodded and pulled something else from his bag. 4 small silver foil packets. The chloro-oxygen thermal packs, he said. I looked at them, like the cleaning solution. Sort of, Jax said. It's a contingency. If we're cornered, you activate this pack, it reacts with the industrial solvents in the air, or the tanks we're carrying. It doesn't explode. It flash vaporizes the chemicals, creates an instantaneous, opaque white smoke. 0 visibility, non-lethal, but it'll choke you. It'll buy us 30 seconds. One last thing, Pietro said, his voice low, directed at me. The radio is compromised. We use no comms. We are silent. If we get separated inside, and you hear my voice, I will use the code we discussed. Salt rain. Do not move. Do not respond, unless you hear those exact words. Anything else is a trap. My heart was hammering, but my hands were steady. Elio returned, throwing 2 white, disposable hazmat suits at our feet. I looked at the suit, then at Pietro, and he was already pulling his on over his dark clothes, the sterile white covering the man who had held me by the window. He looked like an astronaut, or a ghost. He zipped it up and pulled the mask over his face, his dark, intense eyes the only part of him left. He held the other suit out to me. You ready, Lark? His voice came, muffled through the respirator. I picked up the suit and Natiti and the small, black data drive. I'm ready to see the truth. We were ghosts. The plan was perfect, executed with a precision that was almost silent. Nova's diversion was a work of art. The entire security force of the Wave Lane complex was swarming the main loading dock, panicking over a phantom biohazard alert from the Harbor Fall Food Safety Bureau. Pietro and I, clad in white sanitation suits, our faces hidden behind respirators, walked through the rear employee entrance carrying pressurized tanks. We were invisible. We moved through the gray, sterile corridors, our rubber-soled boots making no sound until we reached the sub-level. Ledger 9. The room was cold, kept at a precise 60 degrees, the air humming with the sound of servers. It was a small, windowless box. Pietro stood guard at the door, his tank held casually, just another cleaner. I went to the main rack, the unit labeled Siren. It was a black, monolithic block of hardware, the physical backup. I knelt, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. I pulled the data drive from my suit pocket, the one Nova had given me, and slid it into the maintenance port. A small, embedded monitor lit up, copying "Do not remove." A thin blue line began to crawl across the screen. 5% so, 10%. Pietro was still, a white statue in the doorway, watching the corridor. The silence was absolute, broken only by the server hum. 50%, 60. I watched the numbers tick up, each percentage point a lifetime. 85%, 90. That was when the alarms went off. Not the building-wide fire alarm. This was worse. A localized, high-pitched shriek from the keypad on our door, followed by the heavy thud of magnetic locks engaging. "Lark?" Pietro's voice was sharp, muffled by the mask. A security monitor above the door, one that had been dark, flickered to life. It showed the corridor we had just come through, and a face, sweaty, apoplectic with rage, screaming into a handset. Bert Haggerty. He was wearing black tactical armor over his stained polo shirt. He was flanked by 6 men, all in the same armor, all carrying rifles, Vidron's private army. "It's her!" Bert's voice shrieked over the intercom, so loud it distorted. "The waitress, I see her. They're in Ledger 9. Lock it down, fry the room." 95%? "We're leaving." Pietro said he wasn't asking. "It's not done," I yelled, my eyes glued to the monitor. Pietro didn't argue. He raised his pressurized tank, aimed it at the electronic lock, and squeezed the handle. A blast of super-cooled liquid nitrogen maybe hit the keypad. It sparked, smoked, and went dead. The magnetic thud reversed with a heavy clunk. 99% copy complete. I ripped the drive out, shoving it deep into the zippered breast pocket of my suit, just as the door flew open. "Go!" Pietro shoved me hard toward the exit. He spun, blasting the contents of his tank into the faces of the first two men. They screamed, not in pain but in shock, blinded by the freezing fog, and Pietro was past them, grabbing my arm, pulling me into the hallway. We ran, our boots slipping on the concrete. "The exit to the rail bridge," he yelled. We burst through a fire door and out into the night air. The shock of the cold wind was staggering. We were high up, on an elevated service bridge that crossed over the cargo train lines. 50 feet above the ground, I saw at our escape. 100 yards away, a white van, identical to ours, was parked on the bridge. Nova was in the driver's seat. Jax was on the roof, aiming a grappling gun. The fire door slammed open behind us. "There, stop them, Bert!" Jax fired. The thunk of the grapple hitting the steel girder next to me was deafening. A zip line. "Go! Lark clip in!" Pietro yelled, pushing me toward it. "Freeze FCSA hands in the air." Another man, blocking our path to the van, and he wasn't one of Bert's, and he was solid, professional, and wearing a clean, official FCSA windbreaker. His badge was real. His gun, held steady in a two-handed grip, was aimed directly at Pietro's chest. "Pietro Vescari," the agent said, his voice like gravel. He'd recognized him, even in the suit. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to violate the Harbor Security Act. Put your hands on your head, now." Pietro stopped dead, and he did it. He slowly raised his hands, palms out. He was surrendering. He looked at me, his eyes intense behind the mask. "Lark, go. Get to the truck. Salt rain." It was the code. It meant this is real. Obey me. He was letting himself be arrested. He was sacrificing himself so I could escape with the drive. "Don't you move, Vescari," the agent barked. "Shoot them. What are you waiting for? Shoot them both," Bert screamed, running onto the bridge, his own men fanning out behind him. A shotgun blast roared, echoing across the shipyard. It wasn't the agent. It was Bert, firing wildly, stupidly. The FCSA agent grunted, a sharp, sudden gasp. He looked down at his chest, at the dark stain spreading rapidly across the yellow FCSA letters. His own gun wavered. He had been hit by Bert's reckless shot. He stumbled forward, then collapsed onto the grated walkway. Chaos erupted. Bert's men, seeing a federal agent down, panicked and started firing at us, at everything. "Lark, go!" Pietro yelled, grabbing for me. But I didn't run to the cable. I ran to the agent. I dropped to my knees beside him, ripping off my respirator, and he was coughing, blood on his lips. "No!" I yelled, my voice sounding thin in the wind. I ripped open his jacket. It was bad. "You have to press down. Hold it. Hold it here." I grabbed his hand and shoved it onto the wound, pressing my own hands over his. I knew. This was not a world of guns and data drives. This was a world of pressure and panic, and I knew how to navigate it. "Lark, what are you doing? Leave him." Pietro was beside me, his voice a low, furious growl. Bullets sparked off the railing inches from my head. "He's dying," I screamed back, not looking up. "I'm not leaving him." "You don't have a choice." He grabbed the front of my suit, his grip like a vice, and hauled me to my feet. He didn't push me toward the van. He shoved me toward the edge of the bridge, the railing. "What are you—" "The van?" "Pietro." "They're watching the van. They're watching the cable," he roared over the gunfire. He pointed down 30 feet below. An empty freight train, a long line of flatbed cars, was slowly, almost silently, rolling out of the yard. "We jump." "You're insane." "I've got you." He wrapped one arm around my waist, lifting me clear off the ground. "Breathe in." and then we were falling. The wind screamed in my ears. I squeezed my eyes shut, my hand instinctively clutching the drive in my pocket. We hit the metal roof of the car with a bone-jarring, metallic crash. I rolled, the air blasted from my lungs. Pietro had twisted in midair, taking the full force of the impact himself, his body cushioning mine. He landed hard, and I heard a sickening crack of bone, followed by a sharp, choked-off groan. The train rumbled on, carrying us away from the bridge into the dark labyrinth of the container yard. I scrambled over to him. He was on his side, his mask gone, his face chalk-white and twisted in agony. "Ribs!" he gasped, his hand clutching his right side. "Don't move," I ordered. I ripped open his suit and the shirt beneath. A dark, ugly bruise was already spreading across his skin. Can you breathe?" "I think just cracked," he grunted, his teeth clenched. I looked around, desperate. On the bulkhead of the car, a mandatory first aid kit was bolted to the metal. I ran to it, smashed the plastic cover, and pulled out a roll of compression bandages. My hands, thank God, were steady. "Breathe all the way out," I said. He exhaled, his whole body shaking. I wrapped the bandage tight around his ribcage, pulling it taut, immobilizing the fracture. It was a practiced, efficient movement, honed by years of patching up my stepmother's falls and my own scraped knees. "That'll hold you," I said, my voice shaking. "Can you move?" He nodded, sweat beading on his forehead. A spotlight hit us, blindingly bright. "They're not giving up," I whispered, shielding my eyes. On the gravel service road next to the tracks, 2 all-terrain vehicles were bouncing toward us. Gaining fast, Bert was in the lead, a shotgun in his hand. "They're too fast," Pietro panted, trying to sit up. "Elio," he suddenly grunted, pointing back at the bridge. The youngest member of his team was rappelling from the bottom of Nova's truck, landing lightly on the service road, right in the path of the ATVs. "What is he doing? He's going to be killed." Elio held up one hand, as if to say stop, in the other. He held one of the small, foil chloro-oxy packs. He threw it, not at them, but onto the tracks, right in front of them. "Turn your face," Pietro yelled, grabbing my head and shoving it against his shoulder. "Don't breathe." There was no explosion, just a pressurized thwomp. A cloud of impenetrable, pure white smoke erupted from the tracks. It was instantaneous, a wall of opaque vapor that swallowed the ATVs, the road, everything, and we heard the screech of tires, a crash of metal on metal, and muffled, choking shouts. The smoke had blinded them completely. The train rumbled on, leaving the chaos behind. It slowed as it entered the main container depot. "Now," Pietro whispered. We slid off the side of the car, landing hard on the gravel. We were in a canyon of stacked containers. The sirens were everywhere now. A panicked shriek converging on the bridge we had left. A mile behind us, helicopters chopped the air overhead. "In here," Pietro said, his voice strained. He pulled open the heavy locking bar of a large, dark green container. We slipped inside. He pulled the doors shut, leaving only a sliver of light. We were in absolute darkness, the air thick with the smell of rust and old paint. We stood, listening. Our breathing was the only sound in the world, ragged, harsh, echoing slightly in the metal box. Outside, the sirens wailed, but they were distant. We were safe. My adrenaline was draining away, leaving me freezing cold, shaking violently. My hand, fumbling in the dark, brushed against his... He took it. His fingers were warm, steady and strong. He laced them with mine, his grip firm. We just stood there, in the dark, breathing. I watched the thin sliver of light from the door, my heart feeling too big for my chest. His thumb began to rub a slow, steady circle on the back of my hand. I held on, grounding myself to that single point of contact. This wasn't the hand of a man who had bought my time. It wasn't the hand of a protector or a boss. It was the hand of a partner. He had been willing to get arrested for me. I had run back to save a man who was trying to arrest him. He had jumped off a 30-foot bridge to save me from a bullet. I had bandaged his broken ribs in the dark. This wasn't a favor. This wasn't grace. This was a choice. And we were holding on to it, together in the dark. We didn't stay in the container for long. We waited until the first wave of sirens had converged on the Wave Lane complex. Then we moved, slipping through the maze of the container yard like shadows. Nova picked us up 3 blocks away, her face grim. She drove us to a new safe house, a sterile apartment I'd never seen, and left us with a fresh first aid kit and a burner laptop. The next day, the city was on fire. It wasn't on the mainstream news, not yet, but the local feeds, the Harbor Fall gossip blogs, the forums where the dock workers traded rumors, they were all buzzing. Waitress from Salt and Forge, the one Viscari protected. Running gun battle at Wave Lane. FCSA agent shot. The story was morphing, twisting into a lurid, romanticized legend. The mob boss and the waitress. The establishment reacted, fast and clumsy. The Metropolitan Vice Prevention Committee, Hale's pet agency, held an emergency press conference. I watched it on the small television in the apartment. A spokesman with a sour face stood at a podium and denounced the dangerous romanticizing of organized crime and warned citizens against interfering with official investigations. It was a clear threat, aimed right at me. Then the real FCSA called. It was the agent I had saved on the bridge. His name was Cole. He sounded weak, his voice raspy from a hospital bed. He thanked me for what I did. He said he owed me. And then the questions started. He was convinced I was a victim, that Pietro had kidnapped me, that I was suffering from some kind of Stockholm syndrome. Miss Moreno, we can protect you, he said, his voice earnest. Just tell us what you know. Give us the original drive. We can take Viscari and the Vidron circle down together. I clutched the siren drive, the small piece of black plastic that was now the most important object in my life. I looked over at Pietro. He was sitting at the kitchen table, his ribs tightly bound, his face pale and bruised, wincing every time he moved. He was listening, letting me handle it. Thank you, Agent Cole, I said, my voice steady. But I'm fine. I don't have anything for you right now. I hung up. I couldn't trust them. They saw me as a pawn, a victim. They didn't see me as the person holding the entire game in her hand. If I gave them the drive, it would disappear into an evidence locker, get buried in procedure, and Hala would walk free. I was keeping the evidence. I was keeping the power. And they're coming for you. Lark, Pietro said, his voice quiet. He stood, moving stiffly. They're all coming for you. Vidron, Hale, the FCSA, you're the target now. We're the target, I corrected him. No, you're the one with the drive. I'm just the monster they'll use to discredit you. He came to me, his hands finding my shoulders. His grip was pained, but firm. Nova has a place, a horse farm, far outside the city. It's quiet. It's safe. I need you to go there. I need you to disappear until I can clear the board. He meant until he could go to war, until he could use his muscle to rip Bert and Hale and Vidron apart. I saw the 2 paths, his way and my way. I'll go, I said, his eyes flooded with relief. I'll go on one condition. The relief vanished, replaced by that familiar, calculating stare. You don't touch Bert, I said. You don't move on Sunspire. You don't send Jax or Elio or anyone. You do nothing. You let them think they're safe. The evidence on this drive. It's a scalpel. You're a hammer. We're not using a hammer this time. We're not just getting a new boss for the harbor. We are ending this. My way. I expected him to argue, to tell me I was naive. He just looked at me, his gaze searching my face, and I realized he wasn't just in pain. He was exhausted. He was the one who needed protection now. Agreed, he said, his voice rough. Your way. I had to see Tamsin. I met her at the Spindrift Suds, the laundromat where this had all truly begun. She was vibrating with nervous energy. Lark, what the hell was that at Wave Lane? The news is saying. They're saying you were with Viscari. Jesus, they're painting you as his mall. I have it, Tamsin. I cut through her panic. I slid a small, generic USB drive across the table, a perfect copy of the siren drive. This is everything, the ledgers, the payments, the RH committee memo. It's all there. Her eyes went wide. She grabbed it. This is it. This is the story. I can publish tonight. I can end Sunspire by sunrise. No, I put my hand over hers. You can't. Not yet. What? Are you insane? This is the bomb, Lark. It's a bomb, yes. But if you set it off now, the shrapnel only hits the men in the room. It doesn't hit the man who built the bomb. Hale will survive. He'll cut Bert loose. He'll blame Sunspire. He'll create a new shell company in a week. We have to get him. Publicly. We have to sever the head. Tamsin stared at me. Who are you? You were serving coffee 4 days ago. I was underestimated, I said, the word feeling right in my mouth. I'm going dark for 72 hours. To let the heat die down, I want you to take this copy. Seal it. Put it in a safe deposit box. If you don't hear from me by the end of the 3rd day, you publish everything. It's my life insurance. She nodded. The reporter, in her finally overriding the activist. Okay, 72 hours. But Lark, be careful. You're swimming with sharks. I know, I said, and I'm tired of being bait. Nova's farm was 2 hours north of Harbor Fall, all rolling hills and white fences. It was a different planet. It smelled like hay and horses and clean, cold air. Nova gave me a simple room in the main house, a burner phone with only her number in it, and the keys to an old, beat-up truck. Then she left. I was completely, utterly alone. That night, the quiet was deafening. There were no sirens, no shipyard noise, no angry managers, just the sound of the wind in the trees and the occasional, soft nicker of a horse from the stables. I sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, a small, battery-powered radio playing classical music from a distant station. I missed him. It was a stupid, dangerous, physical ache. I missed the safe house. I missed the smell of his coffee. I missed the solid, grounding weight of his hand on my back, the way he had held me in the kitchen, the way his eyes had looked when I told him I wouldn't be his. I let myself feel it. For just a minute. I let myself remember the heat, the impossible safety I felt with him. Then I shut it down. I had a job to do. This was my choice. Discipline. The next morning, I was checking on the horses when I saw the mail truck coming up the long, gravel drive. It wasn't the regular mail carrier. It was a private courier van. The driver left a single, padded envelope on the porch. My name was on it, in the same neat, graphite pencil script as Pietro's first note, but it wasn't from him. My hands were shaking. I tore it open. It was a photograph, a simple Polaroid. My stepmother, sleeping peacefully in her bed at Asterian care. She looked safe. She looked well cared for. Underneath the photo, a single line was written on a piece of thick, white card. Time is running out. It was a psychological blow, aimed right at my heart. They knew where I was, or they knew where she was. They were telling me that Pietro's protection was an illusion, that they could get to her. His clean, secure facility be damned. My first instinct was to run. To grab the radio Pietro had given me, I had kept it, a silent totem in my bag, and to scream Harbor Fall salt rain until his men came for me. My hand hovered over the bag, my fingers twitching. If I called him, I knew what would happen. He would break his promise. He would go to war. He would unleash Jax and Elio, and blood would run in the streets. And in the chaos, Hale would escape. The evidence would be tainted. I would be the mafia boss's girl, and everything I had done would be for nothing. I pulled my hand back, I put the radio on the table, and I pushed it away. I was not the protected, I was the protector. I sat down at the small desk in my room. I opened the burner laptop. I wasn't going to panic. I was going to work. They had attacked me through my stepmother. I would use that. I started with the billing. I pulled up the records from her old stay at St. Marrow's. I had the siren drive. My copy, I plugged it in. I started cross-referencing. The clerical error that had frozen her insurance, I traced its origin. A digital request from an external auditor. That auditor's IP address, It led back to an office building downtown. The tenant of that office, a nonprofit organization I had never heard of, the Greenport Fund. My blood ran cold. I did a search. The Greenport Fund was a high-profile city charity. Its stated mission was to revitalize the harbor's community health initiatives. It sponsored soup kitchens, funded clinics. And who was the chairman of the board? Who was the face of the fund, smiling in dozens of photos, cutting ribbons, shaking hands? Councilman Roderick Hale. This was it. The fake medical grants. This was how he washed the money and created the leverage. He used his charity to control the hospitals, to pressure insurance companies, to create debt like my father's. And then he fed that debt to North Point Recoveries. I opened a new search tab. The Greenport Fund was having its biggest event of the year, the annual gala. It was in 2 days. At the Glassdrop Pavilion, right on the water, Roderick Hale would be the keynote speaker. It would be full of the press, the city's elite, and every powerful person he wanted to impress. He was handing me a stage. I looked at the photo of my stepmother. I looked at the siren drive. I was not going to leak the data to Tamsin. I was not going to wait for Pietro's war. I was going to crash his party. I was going to put Roderick Hale, his charity, and his whole rotten system on a live stream, and I was going to burn it all down in front of the entire city. The 72 hours of silence were a ticking clock. I drove back to Harbor Fall from the farm, the old truck's engine a low rumble. I was no longer hiding. I was setting a trap. The first piece of bait was myself. I parked 3 blocks away and walked to the Salton Forge. It was just past noon. The place smelled of stale grease and sour coffee. Bert was at the register, his face pasty, his eyes darting toward the door every time the bell chimed. He saw me and flinched, a genuine physical recoil. I put on the performance of my life. I let my shoulders slump. I made my eyes wide and desperate. I twisted my hands in front of me. "Bert," I whispered, just loud enough for him to hear. "Please, I need my job back." His fear evaporated, replaced by a greasy, condescending pity. This, he understood. The weak, pathetic Lark who couldn't pay her bills. "Oh, Lark," he said, shuffling out from behind the counter. He put a clammy hand on my shoulder. "You got yourself into a real mess, didn't you? Running around with him. They're all looking for you. You know." "I know," I whispered, letting a tear track down my cheek. "I made a mistake. I need to work. I have no money." He smiled, a thin, triumphant sneer. "Well, we're short-staffed." He went to the back and grabbed a clean, starched white apron. "You can't work the floor, but you can clean the stockroom. Stay out of sight." He helpfully put the apron over my head, his clumsy fingers fumbling with the strap behind my neck. As he did, his other hand, the one at my chest, brushed the bib. I felt the tiny, hard click, a small, magnetic disc, no bigger than a quarter. He was planting a microphone on me. He was so clumsy, so obvious that I almost felt insulted. "There you go, kid," he said, patting my shoulder. Stay quiet." I went straight to the walk-in cooler. The cold air hit my face, and the heavy door thunked shut, sealing me in with the hanging sides of beef. I pulled out Pietro's radio. I turned it on. I knew Bert and Vidron were listening to the mic on my chest. I held the radio to my mouth. "Nova, Jax, Elio. This is Lark. The package is live. Bert planted a bug. They are monitoring." I took a deep breath. "We're reversing the protocol. From now on, our code, Harbor Fall Salt Rain, means I am compromised. Do not approach. The new code, Rain Salt, means I am clear. Acknowledge." A burst of static. Nova's voice, "Clear. Lark. Rain Salt is the new affirmative." I clicked the radio off. Then I spoke to the apron. My voice was a performance of pure panic, loud enough for the cheap bug to pick up. "Pietro, are you there, please? I don't know what to do." I let my voice crack. "Bert, they're all watching me. I'm scared. I want out." I paused, as if listening to an earpiece. "I have the drive, the siren drive. I have it on me. I let out a sob. Okay, I'll meet you. Where? No, not there. It's too hot. The old Wave Lane rail bridge. Where we jumped. It's the only place. Midnight. Yes, midnight. I'll bring it. Just get me out of here. I left the cooler and went straight to Bert's tiny, windowless office. I needed to see his reaction. His office door was open, but he wasn't there. I glanced at his security monitor, the one that showed the feeds for the diner. And I saw him. He was in the wine cellar, a place he always claimed had no cameras, but he was wrong. The old inventory camera in the corner was still active. He was on the phone, his face red, gesticulating wildly. He was reporting. He had taken the bait. He hung up, and not 2 minutes later, he was joined by another man. I zoomed in on the grainy footage. It was not a Vidron thug. It was a man in a sharp, expensive suit. My blood ran cold. It was the MVPC spokesman, the man who had held the press conference, the one who had denounced the dangerous romanticizing of organized crime. I watched as Bert nervously handed the MVPC agent a thick white envelope, the same kind Pietro had left me. The agent took it, said something that made Bert nod vigorously, and then slipped out the cellar's back exit. MVPC, FCSA. Hale had his fingers in all of them. The system wasn't just broken, it was owned. I hit the record button, copying the last 5 minutes of footage onto a small, clean USB drive from Bert's desk. This was my insurance. I left the diner, the apron and its useless bug on a hook in the stockroom. I met Tamsin in a crowded public park, midday. She handed me a thick, cream-colored envelope, the invitation to the Greenport Gala. It was a press pass, with her name on it. She looked terrible. Her eyes were hollow, and she couldn't stop checking over her shoulder. "Lark, they grabbed me," she whispered, her voice tight with panic. "What? Who?" "I don't know. A black van, no plates. Yesterday, after I saw you, they pulled me off the street. They held me for an hour, in the dark. Didn't ask me any questions." "And then what?" "And then, they just let me go, shoved me out of the van, 3 blocks from my apartment, and they didn't take my phone, and they didn't take anything. They're trying to scare me. Lark, they're telling me to back off." I looked at her, really looked at her. Her terror was real, but the story didn't make sense. Vidron didn't scare reporters. They disappeared them. "Tamsin, don't move," I said. I stepped behind her, my hands going to her jacket, the same one she'd worn before. "You said they didn't take anything." "No, nothing." My fingers found it, tucked under the heavy canvas collar, a small black plastic square, held on by adhesive, a GPS transmitter. "Oh, God," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They didn't grab you to scare you." "Tamsin," I said, pulling the tag off and crushing it under my heel. "They grabbed you to tag you. They let you go so you would lead them to me, or to the drive." The realization hit her. She wasn't the hunter. She was the decoy. And more importantly, she wasn't a traitor. She was clean. "Go dark," I told her, grabbing her shoulders. "Go to your parents' house. Go anywhere but home. Give me your press pass. I'll handle the gala." "But Lark." "Go. You've done enough." She fled. I was on my own. I called Nova from the burner phone. "I need a dress," I said. "Formal, black tie, and I need a portable battery. High capacity, something that can power a live streaming transmitter, and it needs to fit in a clutch." There was a pause. What color dress was all she asked. Next, the law. I needed a clean agency, one Hale couldn't touch. My research had led me to the Urban Transaction Integrity Bureau, the UTI Bureau. They were a tiny, underfunded, and famously incorruptible city agency designed to investigate financial crimes. They were too small for Hale to have bothered infiltrating. I sent their public tip line an encrypted package. It contained 1% of the siren data a single. Clear transaction map showing Sunspire Logistics funding North Point recoveries. I included a burner number. They called back in an hour. The voice was female, sharp, and had no patience. "This is compelling, but it's circumstantial. We can't move on Councilman Hale with this. We need a smoking gun. Caught in the act. Undeniable proof. I'll give it to you. I said, the Greenport Gala. Tonight, have a team ready. Watch the main feed. I hung up. I had one last call to make. I messaged Pietro. I knew he was watching. I knew he had men following me, even from a distance. I knew he wouldn't be able to stand me walking into that gala alone. He would want to send his hammer. My text was simple. Don't interfere at the gala. It's my stage. Let me set it. I waited. The phone buzzed, a single, dry, agonizing reply. Okay. He was trusting me. The weight of it was heavier than the drive. Just as I was stepping into the dress Nova had delivered a simple, elegant black sheath, the burner phone rang, a synthesized, robotic voice. A patient advisory for Asterian care. The condition of your stepmother has become critical. She's being transferred to Harbor Fall General for emergency surgery. My heart stopped. I felt the blood drain from my face. My knees went weak. This was it, the one thing that would break me. I had been so stupid. They had her. I fumbled for the phone, my hands shaking so violently I could barely dial. I called the private, direct line to the nurse's station at Asterian Care. A calm, familiar voice answered, Asterian Care, floor 3. This is Nurse Patel. My stepmother, I gasped, my voice unrecognizable. I just got a call. Is she there? The nurse paused. I heard her check the room. Miss Moreno. Yes, she's right here. She's sleeping. Doctor. Chen just finished her treatment not an hour ago. She's perfectly stable. Is everything all right? I leaned against the wall, sliding to the floor, the black dress pooling around me. I was laughing, or maybe it was sobbing. I couldn't tell. She was fine. She was safe. It was a lie, a final, desperate psychological attack. They were trying to break me, to make me panic, to make me run, to make me sloppy. I stood up. My hands were no longer shaking. The fear was gone, burned away and replaced by a cold, sharp, diamond-hard focus. I picked up a black ink pen from the table. I looked at the palm of my left hand. I wrote down the plan, my map to survival. 1. Access, Tamsin's Pass. 2. Connect, audio, video, main feed. 3. Bait, Bert, K17-4, Expose, Hale, RH. 5. Signal, UTI. I put on my shoes. I packed the transmitter battery into the small, beaded clutch. I looked at the list on my hand, then closed my fingers into a fist. I walked out the door and into the night, ready for the gala. The Glass Drop Pavilion was everything the Salt and Forge was not. It was a cathedral of wealth, all floor-to-ceiling windows and glittering chandeliers, perched on the edge of the pier, looking out at the dark, industrial harbor. The air smelled like expensive perfume and champagne. I clutched my small, beaded bag, the battery inside a heavy, cold weight. Tamsin's press pass, with her terrified, hopeful face on it, had gotten me in without a second glance. I was just another woman in a black dress, invisible. On the main stage, under a massive banner that read, "The Greenport Fund Building, a Safer Harbor Fall," Councilman Roderick Hale was speaking. His voice was smooth, paternal, full of polished, empty words about community, integrity, and safety. The city's elite, hundreds of them in tuxedos and jewels, listened, rapt. "We will not allow the shadows of our past," he said, his voice amplified, "to define our future. We will bring light to every corner of this city." I wanted to be sick. I moved along the wall, toward the back, where the audio-visual table was set up. A single technician was managing 3 different feeds. I waited until his back was turned, then knelt, pretending to fix the heel of my shoe under the table. Just as Nova had predicted, was a secondary junction box, a mess of wires and a small, unsecured Wi-Fi access point for the auxiliary projectors. I pulled out my phone. The high-capacity battery in my clutch was already connected, the transmitter live. I synced my phone to the access point. A small icon on my screen lit up. I was now a secondary input for the entire gala's projection system. I activated the transmitter, a silent, live audio feed. I didn't push the video. Not yet. I found Bert Haggerty near the raw bar, stuffing shrimp into his mouth. He was wearing an ill-fitting tuxedo, his face slick with sweat and self-importance. He saw me and his eyes went wide, not with fear, but with a sudden, predatory excitement. He thought his midnight rendezvous at the rail bridge was about to pay off. "Lark," he hissed, grabbing my arm, his fingers digging in. "What are you doing here? You're going to spoil the whole thing." I played my role. I was the panicked, cornered girl from the diner. "Bert, please, I can't meet him. Vascari, he's too dangerous. I want to make a deal. With you." His chest puffed out. He loved a deal with me. "You should have thought of that before you ran off with that psycho." "I have the drive. Bert, the real siren drive. The one from Wave Lane." His eyes lit up with a greedy, feral light. He licked his lips. You have it here." "No, God, no. It's safe. I'll trade it for protection. Real protection from you, from your people." He laughed, a wet, shrimp-filled sound. "My people? Yeah, you're smart to be scared, kid." He leaned in, his breath hot and sour. "Vascari is nothing. We own this city. We've got the real treasury. You think that 20 grand he gave you was something you should see? Container K-17. North Point's entire vault. Millions. All lined up. Container K-17. The final piece. The audio feed was live. The UTI Bureau, listening in, had their smoking gun. "Just give me the drive, Lark," Bert sneered, "and I'll make sure they only break one of your legs." I stepped back. My performance done. I'll think about it. I turned, and as I did, I saw two men in black suits at the main entrance, their eyes scanning the crowd. They weren't gala security. They were Vidron. They had seen me talking to Bert. They saw me turn to leave. They started to move. And then the lights went out. The entire pavilion plunged into absolute pitch-black darkness. Hale's amplified voice cut off. The music died. A collective gasp, then a wave of panicked screams filled the hall. They had detected my signal. They had cut the power. But they were too late. In the blackness, I pulled out my phone. They had killed the local projection, but not my transmitter. I switched the feed. I pushed my signal, not to the dead projectors, but to the building's external network, to the one thing that had its own independent power source, the massive 50-foot LED billboard on the roof, the one facing the harbor, the one that was currently supposed to be showing an ad for the Greenport Fund. I pushed the video. "Lark." His voice was a whisper. Right at my shoulder. I didn't jump. I didn't even flinch. I had known he would break his promise. Pietro Vascari was beside me, a shadow within the shadows. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo. He wore a long, dark wool overcoat, and he moved with the silent, fluid confidence of a man who owned the dark. "I told you not to come," I whispered, my eyes scanning the room, trying to find the Vidron men in the sea of panicked civilians. "And I trusted you," he whispered back, his voice low and rough, so close I could feel the warmth of his breath. "But I didn't trust them. They're at the doors. All three." A flashlight beam, bright and hard, cut through the dark. It found me. "There, get her." Pietro stepped in front of me, his long coat a wall between me and the light. The Vidron man lunged, a knife glinting. Pietro didn't draw a gun. He moved inside the man's reach, one hand catching the wrist, the other striking the elbow. A sharp, solid sound. The man went down. Another came from the side. Pietro spun, intercepting him, using the man's own momentum to send him crashing into a champagne fountain. He was a storm of controlled, brutal, close-quarters combat, no guns, no lethal force. He was keeping his other promise. A third man, bigger, grabbed me from behind, one arm locking around my throat, cutting off my air. I drove my heel back, hard, into his kneecap. He roared, his grip loosening just enough. Pietro was there in a heartbeat. He didn't punch. He used his open palm, striking the man's collarbone with a force that made the big man's entire body go limp. He collapsed. Pietro spun, pulling me back until my shoulders hit his chest. We were back to back, breathing hard in the total darkness, surrounded by the screams of the city's elite. "You're a terrible listener," I panted, my heart hammering. "You're a magnet for trouble," he replied. His hand found mine in the dark, his grip iron tight for just 1 second. A question. "Trust me," he whispered. My fingers squeezed back. "Trust. They're trying to get the power on," he said, his voice all business. "We have to split. I need to get Bert. He's the key to Hale. You need to keep that signal live. It's the only thing that will save us. Get to the balcony. The signal's clearer, and it's a better vantage point." "Go," I said. He melted away into the darkness, a ghost. I turned and ran, pushing through the terrified crowd, heading for the grand staircase. I burst onto the mezzanine balcony. Below me, the hall was a sea of chaos. Pietro was moving through it, a shark. He found Bert, cowering under a table, and dragged him out. I saw the glint of Pietro's pistol, pressed not to Bert's head, but to his phone. "Call him!" Pietro's voice boomed. "Call Hale. Tell him you have the delivery. Now." And then the power came back on. The chandeliers flickered, then blazed to life. The music stuttered. The screaming died down, replaced by a confused murmur. The main doors of the pavilion burst open. "MVPC, everybody stay where you are." It was them, the real cops, the Metropolitan Vice Prevention Committee, a dozen of them in full tactical gear, fanning out, their weapons raised. But they weren't looking at the crowd. They were looking at one man. "Pietro Vescari," the lead agent yelled. "You are under arrest." They were advancing on him, ignoring Bert completely. The trap. It was all a setup. They were going to arrest Pietro, rescue Hale, and bury the whole thing. "No," I whispered. I looked down at my phone. The signal was strong. The external LED wall was playing. I hit one more button, pushed to all internal screens. The massive projector screen behind Hale's abandoned podium, the one that had been showing his face, flickered. It wasn't showing Hale anymore. It was showing grainy, time-stamped footage from the Salton Forge wine cellar. The entire hall, all the cops, all the wealthy patrons, looked up. They saw Bert Haggerty, their local greasy spoon manager, and they saw him hand a thick white envelope to the lead MVPC agent, the very same man who was, at that exact second, pointing a gun at Pietro Vescari. The hall went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. The MVPC agent froze, his face a mask of dawning, absolute horror. He was exposed. "That," I said, my voice shaking, "is what a compromised city looks like." Roderick Hale had not been on the stage. He had been near the side, and I saw him. He saw the screen. He saw his whole world collapse. He made a break for it, a small, unmarked staff exit near the edge of the pavilion. I ran. I vaulted the balcony railing, landing on a decorative awning, and dropped the last 10 feet to the main floor. I landed badly, my ankles screaming in protest, but I didn't stop. I intercepted him, cutting him off, standing between him and the door. He was just a man, an old, terrified man in an expensive suit. "Mr. Councilman," I called out, my voice raw. One of the technicians, seeing the drama, pointed a live microphone at me. My voice boomed through the hall, the same speakers that had carried Hale's lies. He stared at me, his eyes wide, cornered. "You spoke tonight about a safer harbor fall," I said, walking toward him, the crowd parting around us. "I have a question about the budget. Can you tell us—" "What is the RH committee line item? The one funded directly by Sunspire Logistics, the one you've been running through the Greenport Fund for 3 years. He was speechless. He just stared at me, his mouth opening and closing, his face the color of ash. I had him. The city had him. It was over. The silence in the pavilion was a compressed spring. It snapped. From outside, I heard not just sirens, but the heavy, grinding roar of engines. Pietro grabbed my hand, his grip like iron, ignoring my throbbing ankle. "They're not giving up," he said, his voice urgent, pulling me past the stunned gala-goers, past the frozen, disgraced MVPC agents. He led me through a heavy glass side door onto an exterior walkway, a long corridor suspended over the dark, sprawling docks. "Where are we going?" "They're going to the vault," he said, his voice tight as he scanned the yard below. Bert's big mouth. Container K-17. He was right. Down below, in the chaos of the container yard, 2 black armored trucks were plowing through the stacks, heading for a specific, dark green container. It was Vidron. They were going to destroy the physical evidence, the cash, the ledgers, everything. Pietro stopped, pulling me into the shadow of a steel girder. He reached into his long overcoat. He wasn't holding a gun. He held a small, black remote, the kind used for industrial demolitions, with a single red button. He pressed it into my hand. "You said your way," he said, his voice low, his eyes never leaving the trucks below. "No casualties. That's not a bomb. It's the chloro-oxy-thermal pack. Same as the bridge. It's linked to a unit we planted inside K-17. It won't destroy the evidence. It will just mark it obscenely." I looked at the remote, then at him. He was giving me the final move. "Do it, Lark," he urged. "Signal the Bureau." I pressed the button. Down in the yard, there was no explosion, just a pressurized, deafening thwomp. A massive, dense, impossibly thick column of pure white smoke erupted from the seams of container K-17. It shot 100 feet into the night air, a white flag of surrender, illuminated by the pavilion lights and the oncoming sirens. The Vidron trucks skidded to a halt, blinded, confused, and then the second wave of sirens hit. These weren't MVPC. These were different, blue and white, smaller, faster, and moving with purpose. The Urban Transaction Integrity Bureau. They swarmed the yard, cutting off the Vidron trucks, their agents moving with a speed and precision the corrupt cops had lacked. They separated from the MVPC, forming a hard, professional perimeter around the smoking container, securing the scene. Back in the pavilion, the spell was broken. Hale's own security detail, men who had just seen their boss's corruption broadcast on a 50-foot screen, backed away from him, their hands raising, distancing themselves from the stain. "Mr. Hale." A new voice cut through the murmur. Agent Cole. The real FCSA agent, the one I had saved on the bridge. His arm was in a sling, his face pale, but his eyes were hard as iron. He was flanked by 2 U.S. Marshals. "Roderick Hale," Cole announced, his voice carrying across the entire room. "You are under arrest for conspiracy, obstruction of a federal investigation, and money laundering." As the marshals cuffed Hale, who had finally completely crumpled, Cole pointed at the cowering, whimpering Bert Haggerty, and him to cuff him. It was almost over. I turned to Pietro, a wave of dizzying relief washing over me, making my knees weak. "Lark, move!" Pietro's voice was a roar. A hand, smelling of sulfur and rage, grabbed my hair, yanking me backward, a cold, sharp blade pressed against my throat. I was pulled against a hard body, used as a human shield. Laertes Verd, the head of the Vidron Circle, a man I had only heard whispers about. He had slipped through the cracks, and he was standing on the metal stairs leading down to the dock, his eyes burning with hatred, staring at Pietro. "Vescari Verd," screamed, the blade digging into my skin. "You took my port. You took my men. Now I take her." Pietro stopped, 10 feet away on the stairs below us. He raised his hands, empty, open. "You want to trade? She's not part of this. She's a civilian. Let her go. Take me." "No, Pietro," I yelled, my voice choked. "A trade," Verd sneered, his grip tightening. "I like that." He was distracted. It was all I needed. 1 second. I was not the girl from the diner. I was not the asset. I was not the bait. I stomped my high-heeled shoe down, grinding it into the arch of his foot with all my weight. He roared, his grip tightening. I didn't stop. I jammed my head back, hard, into his face. I felt the wet crunch of his nose. He bellowed, his arms spasming, the knife moving an inch from my throat. I acted. I dropped my weight, ducking under the blade, and drove my elbow backwards, straight into his solar plexus. Air exploded from his lungs. His grip on my hair was gone. I was free. Pietro moved. He was not a brawler, he was a surgeon. He flowed up the stairs, caught Verd's knife wrist, twisted it, and applied pressure to the joint. The knife clattered on the metal steps. Pietro struck Verd once, at the base of the neck. It wasn't a killing blow. It was precise, disabling. Verd collapsed, conscious but paralyzed, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Pietro stood over him, breathing hard. He looked at the UTI agents swarming the stairs. "He's yours," Pietro said, kicking the knife away. He had kept his promise. The sky opened up. The harbor fall rain began to pour, cold and cleansing. Behind us, the glass drop pavilion erupted, not in panic, but in the chaotic, decisive noise of resolution. The MVPC was being disarmed, their badges taken, the UTI was in charge. The news was already spreading. The Greenport Fund was a fraud, its assets frozen. The fake medical orders were void. Asterian care was vindicated. It was over. Pietro turned to me. We were alone on the walkway, the red and blue lights of the cop cars painting us in frantic, rotating colors. He was drenched in seconds, the rain plastering his dark hair to his forehead. He was breathing heavily, the adrenaline fading, the pain from his broken ribs returning. He looked at me, and his eyes, those dark, unreadable eyes, were finally, completely open. "This," he said, his voice rough over the sound of the rain, gesturing to the chaos, to me. It was never protection. I waited, my heart pounding, the rain dripping from my chin. It was standing beside. I stepped toward him, closing the final distance. I put my hands on his chest, feeling the solid, steady beat of his heart under my palms. I looked up at him. "So stand here," I whispered. I kissed him. It wasn't the desperate, frantic, fire and panic kiss from the safe house kitchen. This was slow. This was warm. This was a promise. It was consensual. A quiet, profound agreement in the middle of the storm, with the sirens as our orchestra. He wrapped his arms around my waist, his broken ribs forgotten, and held me, not like he was shielding me, but like he was anchoring himself. It was the kiss of two people who had seen the worst of the city and had chosen, freely, to face it together. The next morning, the media had a new name for me, the waitress who flipped the harbor. My phone, the burner, was flooded with interview requests. I ignored them all. I threw the phone in a dumpster. I went back to the only place that felt real, the Salton Forge. It was closed. A large, official-looking yellow sign was taped to the glass door, closed by order of the UTI Bureau, pending audit. I stood there, looking at the peeling letters, the empty counter, the place where my old life had ended. I wasn't sad. I was free. On the counter, visible through the glass, was a single, familiar, thick white envelope. I used my old staff key. The lock clicked. The bell chimed, a lonely sound in the empty room. I walked to the counter, the same spot where he had sat, and picked it up. Inside was not just a stack of bills, though there was one, $20,000, neatly bound. Beneath it was a set of keys and a thick legal document, a deed. It was the title transfer for a storefront on the south side, a good location, with foot traffic. The name on the transfer, the new owner, was me, Lark Moreno. Tucked into the deed was a note, in that same strong, graphite pencil script. "You said you needed time. Now you have a place. The Moreno Community Kitchen, for everyone else who needs a second chance." A small addendum was at the bottom. "One condition, you don't hang my name on the sign." I laughed, the sound echoing in the empty diner. I took out a pen. I wrote on the bottom of his note, "I won't. I'll just hang the salt rain rule for the team." 6 months later, the Moreno Community Kitchen was open. The rain was lashing against the new, clean windows. It was a true harbor fall night. The kitchen was warm, bright, and smelled like fresh bread and roasting vegetables. My team, 3 kids from the shelter and a woman who had lost her job at the shipyard, were prepping for the dinner rush. The bell over our door chimed. He walked in. He wore a simple dark coat, the wool damp from the rain. He looked like just another customer. On the wall-mounted television, a news anchor was announcing the first guilty verdict from the UTI's prosecution. Councilman Roderick Hale, sentenced to 20 years. Pietro Vescari slid onto a stool at my counter. I wiped my hands on my apron. "What can I get you?" He looked at me, and that rare, small smile touched his mouth. "I'll have a black coffee and a slice of the apple pie." I poured his coffee, and he was managing his periphery, the city's underbelly, but he was doing it his way. Clean. I was running the kitchen my way. We had our own work, but our paths were now intertwined, running parallel. He slid his cup forward. I touched my water glass to it, a silent toast. Our eyes met, and we said everything that ever needed to be said. And if anyone ever asks me where this story, my story, really began, I won't tell them about the gala, or the gunfight, or the drive. I'll tell them the truth. It started when I got a $2 tip all day, and at closing, a man left an envelope on the counter. Thank you so much for listening to our story. We would love to connect with all of you, so please comment below and let us know where in the world you're listening from, and share your thoughts on Lark and Pietro's journey. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and like this video. It truly helps. And if you want to support us even more, please hit that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.